I know you sort of famously did ayahuasca 31
Yeah,
times, right?
yeah, yeah,
Why do it that many times? I just have to imagine that
yeah.
after like half a dozen times, you'd be like, this isn't, this isn't working,
I
right?
know, I know. So I guess there's just this part of me, this devotional part of me that can get hijacked. Like I was so devotional to the shamans, to the practices that I learned, to the spiritual connections that I was making while under the substance. And I wanted to pursue that path because I honestly thought I was supposed to be a shaman. I was under
Okay.
so much pain. I couldn't relate to any Western text. Anything I read about depression or anxiety, nothing resonated other than when I would read books about like shamanic initiations
Okay.
because it was
Got it.
such a full-blown crisis. It was beyond just depression. Like I
What,
was in agony. Yeah.
were any of those shaman guys though, kind of at some point just like, hey man, this ain't working.
You want to hear something crazy? It took 31 ceremonies for that to happen.
Really?
After 31, after 30, the shamans and I had a meeting, and they had broken Spanish and I had broken Spanish, and we basically were saying, no mas, this is
Yeah,
dangerous.
this
No
isn't working.
mas,
Yep.
this is very dangerous. And we agreed that I would do another one. A teaspoon would be my 31st dose, and I drank a
Okay.
teaspoon. Um, and that was not a good ceremony, that 31st. And I left the center maybe 3 or 4 days later. But it wasn't until 31 that the shamans
Oh
and
wow.
me came to that conclusion.
How long, like what span of time was that? Those 31 journeys?
31 was over the course of about a year and a half over 3 different Amazon visits.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah.
Did you get any benefit out of that? Do you look back and go, oh, there was actually some stuff that was an upside out of that?
Yes. I'll tell you what. So for me, ayahuasca connected me to God, the universe, spirit, the earth. It took me out of my normal waking consciousness. It allowed me to see that there was a spiritual and a metaphysical dimension to this universe, and I previously would have just laughed at that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it cracked me open in a way to be able to know that there was some sort of purpose behind this. There was some sort of meaning, that I was on a special journey. Ayahuasca helped me see that it was truly a special journey that I was on. Even if I were to have died, or even if I were to have gone mad, which were definitely two possible options, um, or to just end up, yeah, in an institution, it still was a special journey because I was riding an edge of, let's call it, insanity and being a healer. It was
Yeah.
really like an edge there of being a healer or going insane. Um, and and so for those reasons, ayahuasca I do believe, has a deep light and something very potent there. But the cost of that was major. I fractured myself even deeper. I shattered something in my psyche that took me years to heal afterwards. And I just kept ripping myself open deeper and deeper without proper guidance, groundedness, and integration.
A lot of your work is kind of, I don't know what you call it exactly,
Mhm.
but you could call it
Yeah.
mental, emotional, spiritual, all of that. So talk a little bit about that aspect of it, because
Yeah.
you even talked about people being sort of an antenna of consciousness kind of thing, and that's
Yeah.
certainly a potential even scientific argument out there of like, yeah, we're sort of receivers of it potentially.
Yeah.
Talk about the importance of that in not only your own journey, but like the work you do and how you see that applying to people's lives, and maybe also the weight people may have to give it, because I think a lot of people
Yeah.
come at this from and I would include myself in this place. I would,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Being honest, like, okay, a physical detox, and if I can do that, I'm good to go. And maybe
Yeah.
there's a whole nother aspect of this that they need to be thinking about as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. You know, physical detox is the thing that humans can grasp. If they are open-minded enough, they can grasp onto that. They can understand that. They can say, okay, this makes enough logical sense for me to participate in that sort of thing. usually a lot of high performers, athletes, soldiers, highly trained individuals and warriors. A lot of times I find that they do have trouble with the metaphysical or the spiritual, or at least wanting to believe or wanting to understand or feeling. And there tends to just be like, what I can grasp is true, and what I can't grasp is, I don't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
So what I've observed in my own journey and all my clients, and I've worked with thousands of people at this point, is that there's very, very deep wounding that people carry around. Okay. This is called samskaras in Sanskrit, which is the word for wound. And essentially, due to trauma when we're younger, really it's trauma, stress, and tension. People are constantly holding on to trauma, stress, and tension, and they don't know how to release trauma, release stress, release tension. And people are constantly building and building and building more and more and more.
Yeah.
Even if they're a high performer, even if they're a billionaire, even if they're an elite athlete, an elite soldier, it's constantly building tension patterns that people don't know how to actually release and let go. This is like, in men, it's an imbalance, right, between the masculine and the feminine, the ability to actually let go, to receive. And they fall into just having to do and to accomplish and to dominate and to win. So what happens is, it's hard to explain in one summarizing statement, but people have core wounds that are very unaddressed, right? Deep desires to be loved, to be liked, to wanting to look good, deep things from our parents that are unaddressed. And this festers. These wounds fester, and people block them out or lie to themselves, and it creates physical illness. See, spiritual, emotional duress can create physical illness. And usually when someone gets clear with their soul, I find, and this is going to sound very esoteric, but when someone gets really clear with their soul, I find it's much, much easier to heal. Okay. And again, you can poke holes in this and ask me different questions to stimulate me, because it's hard to describe it, but people are carrying much more than they would think. When we do these men's retreats and different retreats that I run, and you take away the stimulation of making money, and you take away their phone, you take away the digital energy, and they're sitting with themselves, most people are in deep pain somewhere that they avoid and they run away from. And so all of this stuff, it accumulates. It just like the toxins, so does the trauma, the stress, and the tension. And then people pop. They can't hold it together.